Welcome to the Hennepin County Training Module 2, Completing the CDCS Plan. This training, Completing the CDCS Plan, focuses on the plan itself and the details that are required for approval. We'll also discuss the Health and Safety Plan, which is an additional requirement. Let's complete the plan. So when you are starting to write your CDCS plan, if you're writing it about yourself, give this some thought. If you're writing this on behalf of another person, think about that person, or better yet, talk to the person about what this CDCS plan is all about. Because CDCS is for the purpose of having people have a better life, learn more skills, become more independent, it's really important to take that bigger picture and know what helps that person to have a better day. What parts of any day or any activities are hard and why? What can be done to build on the strengths of the person to make better days happen more often? It's really about who that person is, what's important to them, and how can they get that. So we have CDCS forms and attachments, and they are all in your CDCS toolbox, and we'll review them here electronically. This is the first page of the CDCS Community Support Plan. Your next steps checklist indicates an anticipated start date. What we want you to do is to write a 12-month draft plan. And our hope with that is that it'll be easy to adjust if the dates change due to a need for another reassessment or any other factors that can change the date of the plan. It's important to complete all of the spaces, put information in there concerning the person or how you're using the plan, or kind of a who's who. So the date span at the top, this would be a new plan. For number 3, complete the contact information for the person who's receiving the services and check the waiver type. Number 4, complete the contact information for the parent or legal representative or managing party if there is one. The lead agency is your CDCS Hennepin County Case Manager. If you don't have one assigned to you yet, you can just put in Hennepin County and get more details later. If you are working with a contracted case management agency, that is who you would put in that number 5. Number 6 says fiscal support entity. DHS is updating this form. Realistically, it should say financial management service provider, and you have already selected that agency for the money to go through. Number 7, if you choose to use a support planner, include that person's information here. And if you're using a support planner, they are probably the ones filling this out. But then what they will do is sit down with you and have an extensive conversation about who the person is, what's important to them, what are you interested in staying the same and how can that be supported, what would you like to see changed and how could that happen, what do you need to make that happen. Number 8, the model. So right now, the only employment model that the state of Minnesota is using is the payroll model. So please check that. Additional contacts. So this section expands by clicking on a tab at the bottom of the section. Please add the additional contacts that are important to the person. It can be the doctor, the hospital, other service providers such as OT, PT, people who are important to the person. Could be other family members, could be a neighbor, but basically if you mention somebody later in the plan that is an entity that you want to get a service from, we would like to have that contact information in this beginning section. Thanks. Number 10, evaluation of last year's plan. So if this is your first year, you can say not applicable and you can skip that section. In future years, you would write down each goal that you had used the previous year and then talk about what you did, how it worked, and if you're going to keep that the same, do it differently or get rid of it and do something different. CDCS is really a program that provides support to individuals and families, and to do that in the best way, we want folks to really look at what they're doing, consider how it could be better, and keep tweaking it so that we can get the best program for people that's possible. All right, number 11. This is where we start to learn about who the person is. Think that you are telling a story. Think that you are introducing the person who's going to get the waiver to a neighbor or to someone who's going to be an important part of that person's life. And you want to be honest and you want to be respectful. You want to introduce them in a way that you might introduce yourself to someone else. You want to talk about the person's strengths, their needs, their likes, their dislikes. We really want to get a well-rounded picture of the person. Number 12. So in addition to those likes and dislikes, strengths and needs, it's important to have a description of the disability or disabilities that the person has, those diagnoses, and how those impact the person's life each day. That information that you provide will really help us to better understand what the barriers and challenges are and why later in the plan you might be asking for certain things because of these barriers that you've identified in this section. It's important for us to also have basically a little list of the diagnoses and conditions, and these would be the same as what you provided to the MnChoice's assessor when he or she came and completed the assessment. If you can't think of what they are, you can call and ask the assessor or look at a copy of the assessment that they mailed to you. But please do be thorough in both of these areas. The allocation amount for CDCS is set by the state of Minnesota, and it's based on the most recent MnChoice's assessment or legacy screening that was completed for the individual. This allocation amount can change every time that an assessment occurs. So it's not a static amount that is the same year after year after year. It's used only for the person and based only on that person's needs. The allocation amount is intended to be used solely for the person and the programs and supports that help that person to have the best life and learn new skills and become more independent. It cannot be used for things like groceries, rent, mortgage, car, vacation kinds of things. All services or items that you list in the plan need to be reasonable and cost efficient. It doesn't matter how much money is in the budget. Sometimes folks will have a budget that they're concerned that they won't be able to use it all and worried that if they don't use it all that they will be penalized. That's not the case. So really important to look at who the person is, what they need, what's the best way for us to provide this in a way that you or I would think was reasonable and be cost effective. When you're writing your plan, again, talk to the person that this plan is about. Think about who they are, what they want to learn, what they might need to learn, how they can best get both what they want and what they need, building on the strengths of that person, and then how you can incorporate that into the plan that you're writing. So when you're writing the plan, determine the goals of that plan. Base those goals on the person's assessed needs. Again, that goes back to the MinChoices assessment that was completed. Look at the information you have from that assessment. You might also look at other IEP information or recent medical specialist evaluations and reports. Try to think, again, big picture of who that person is and what they need, and then kind of hone in on what's the most important goals to get them there. Write goals for the things that you're requesting and ensure that those goals are measurable and observable. We're going to read through that and we're going to think, how are we going to see this change? How are we going to know if this is happening? So that's the question to ask yourself as you're writing the goals. Here are some important points to know when you're writing your plan regarding wages. The minimum wage right now is $13.25 for staff working under the CDCS option. Wages can vary depending on where you live and any relation that you might be to the person who's receiving services. CDCS is one of the only programs that will allow parents of minor children to be paid as staff people. Likewise, to allow spouses of people on the waiver to work as staff and be paid. There are wage guidelines and requirements around those situations, and you can talk to your financial management service for specific questions about that. And also, they are the experts for any labor law questions. Another important rule to remember is that within a household, there can only be a maximum of up to 40 hours a week worked where either a parent or parents or spouse can be paid. So you could have a two-parent household and have maybe a couple of minor children who are receiving waivered services using CDCS, and even with those two children and two parents, within that household, you could still only have 40 hours a week maximum combined as parents paid for staff. Ask your financial management service if you have more questions. On to writing the CDCS Community Support Plan. So number 14 starts the first of 4 categories within the support plan, and that's personal assistance. So this area documents what personal cares are needed by the person and who the staff people are who are going to be helping that person with bathing, dressing, grooming, those daily activities of daily living skills. So the type of service and who's being paid is in that first column. Next is the rate of pay or the cost for that service. Then it's the number of hours per week, month or year, number of weeks or months, whether PTO applies. And again, go back to your fiscal management service if you have questions about that. Also about if payroll taxes apply. If you are using the form provided by the state, the math will be done for you and it'll all calculate out to the total on the right side. So you set the rate for the wage within a reasonable range. You should set that rate based on the skills and training experience of the person and what is similar to rates in your local community for that similar kind of work. As I said before, parents who are working as staff of minors and spouses who are working for their spouses on the waiver have maximum amounts that are set by DHS. Number 16 starts goals. So insert a goal number in the space above number 16. You can add more goals by clicking on the Add Goal tab. Again, you want that goal to be measurable and observable. What would you like to see improved or changed or maintained for the person? How are you going to know if that is happening? For example, if the person is working on a bathing goal, it may be that the goal is that Brianna will take a bath 4 times a week. That's a measurable goal because we can know if she's taking it 4 times a week or not. We can add more details to describe and measure the results or the amount of help or supervision or monitoring that would be needed to make that happen. Number 17, what special skills, qualities, skills, etc. do you want the agency or staff people to have when they do this work? And then explain why those services are needed and how they're related to the person's assessed needs, and not just a typical support, not just something that a parent would do typically for a child that age. So when you're talking about those skills and qualities, if you are a parent who is working to support your minor child as a staff person, you need to know that you can meet those skills and qualities as well. If you are a staff for your child who is less than 18, or a staff for your husband or wife, in this area, you would check the Yes box and a drop-down schedule appears. This is where you would put the hours of each day that you would be working as staff. For instance, you might work for your minor child on a Monday through Friday mornings, maybe from 7 to 8 a.m. during the school year. And in the summertime, you would click the Add Schedule and get another line of boxes because maybe they sleep a little later in the summer, and maybe during that time I would be assisting my child as a staff person between the hours of 9 and 10. So think about what the year is like, what your schedule would be, and reflect that using as many rows of boxes as is needed. Below that, you'll see the job duties. Now, because CDCS offers the ability for a person to work as staff for their minor child or for their spouse, it's like any other job. We are accountable for the hours that we work and the duties that we fulfill. So those job duties need to be detailed and include the specific tasks that are needed and how the staff person should complete each task. This is where details are really helpful. There's an example there about bathing. Staff will adjust the water temperature, follow the task analysis, and prompt John to use soap and rinse, and report the progress daily. That's very detailed. Anybody reading that would know exactly what they needed to do. So this is an area that please use as much detail as possible so that if anybody would pick it up and read it, they would know exactly what you're doing and why you are working as staff for either your minor child or for your spouse. Moving on to the next section, that's treatment and training. So this area identifies specialized healthcare services that teach skills, vocational work supports, and training. You can also add areas in here like music therapy, art therapy, other direct therapies. Again, you would note the type of service, the rate of pay, the number of hours per week or month or year, whatever makes sense. Some specialized therapies might happen once a month. Maybe they happen every 2 weeks. Reflect whatever makes sense. And if your person that this waiver is about is on the developmental disabilities waiver, it is crucial that that person have services that teach, train, and educate the person. And that must be included in the plan. So those services can be purchased and placed in this section, or they can be explained in the narrative parts that we've been going through. So again, you'll complete more goal areas, and same as before, refer back to slides 14 and 15. You'd add a number to the goal, you'd describe the goal, and be sure to include details about how it's implemented and how it's measured. How are we going to know that this person is learning this skill? What are they going to show us? Number 20. This is an option under the waiver for an up to 30% budget exception. I know it says 20%. DHS is updating this form, and so then it'll say 30%. This is an area that you need to discuss with your case manager. There's various conditions and situations where this can apply, and there's a lot of information and documentation that needs to occur. So when you are first writing the plan, know that this is something that you'll ask after you get the plan going. The third section is environmental modifications and provisions. This section includes transportation, mileage, assistive technology, home and vehicle modifications, environmental supports, supplies, special prescribed diets. So this is an area where, again, we need detail about what is that service and who would be paid to provide that service or that modification or that piece of equipment or item or device. What is the cost? What is the quantity? And for anything that is being used under CDCS through the waiver, there needs to be a goal about what is the person going to learn, how are they going to use this, how is it going to make their life better because of either this person as staff or this thing or item or therapy. The fourth section is self-direction support activities. This area is more technical, and it includes administrative costs, FMS fees, payroll costs, taxes, etc., etc. This is a good place to check with the rates, check on the rates with your FMS. They know all those things. They know the payroll taxes, they know the percentage of PTO, they know what should go in each box, and you are using waiver dollars to pay them for their services. So this is a good opportunity to get to know your FMS person. All right, then we're moving on to the annual budget plan. So again, here's where the annual budget amount would be listed and the dates at the top of the page. Moving down towards number 23, this is an area where people who are continuing to use or deciding to use PCA service or nursing service through an agency, this is where you would put those costs and details. And you can get that information from the agency where you would be hiring those people from. Most people will not use these service areas, but they are available. We're getting down to the end. So 24 is where everything gets summed up. All of the categories in the plan. The automatic math function brings the 4 previous totals down to their grand total area. The plan goes on to a couple of other categories that are important. Monitoring. So if you are the parent or the managing party, or if you yourself are organizing the waiver for yourself, you need to indicate here who will monitor health and safety along with the lead agency or case manager. So if you're the parent, you put your names in there. And if you're a parent who's living daily with your child, you would put other and then indicate daily. If your situation is different, you'd mark it appropriately. The question about who will monitor expenditures along with the lead agency case manager, well, again, that's you because you're using the waiver, and part of using CDCS is being responsible for the monitoring of the health and safety of the person and of how the money is used. And so again, you would put down at least monthly, and then the FMS also monitors the dollars and will send you reports about that each month. Further down, it asks who will provide the staff training. Again, that's you. With CDCS, you select the staff, hire the staff, train the staff. So you either do that yourself or you pay someone else to do that for you. And here's where you'd indicate what you're doing. So you're done writing the CDCS CSP, and now you're moving on to writing about the health and safety plan. We have a templated plan that most people use, and you can also use the area in the document provided. But what's important is that we need to know the risks that the person faces and how those risks will be addressed. Include all the areas where the person might be vulnerable and what is the staff's ideal response, both proactively and if something happens. Think of all the environments the person might be in where people who are paid through the waiver might be with them and support them in some way. And then the other thing is, don't write this health and safety plan once and then use it for the next 10 years. We know that people change and grow, and so update it through the year if something changes. Maybe all of a sudden your person has an emerging health condition, which changes the risks that they have and what staff need to do to support them. That would be a change to the health and safety plan. Here is a sample of that first page of what the templated health and safety plan looks like. And on that, we want you please to remember to sign and date that front page. We need that as part of the total submission for the plan. Here's more detail about the health and safety plan. So you would note if a person is at risk or not at risk, and what the concern is, and what the safety plan is. For example, this situation talks about John. He's at risk because he will go outside when it's cold out without a coat, or sometimes when it's hot, he'll wear a bunch of layers. And the safety plan is that staff will let John know what the weather is outside and make sure that he's dressed appropriately before he goes out. Again, detail's important. Moving on to the what will I do in case section. This is kind of like emergency contacts. It's important that we have 2 emergency contacts. If you are noting parents as emergency contacts, please also try to think of a non-parent person so that in case the parents can't be reached, there's an alternative. This is required, and sometimes families or individuals will say, you know, I don't have anybody. And then we would challenge you to say, think of somebody. Everybody needs to have someone that they'd call in the case of an emergency, in the case that staff don't show up, or that I am sick and definitely need help. Encourage and nurture those relationships so that there is someone that can be listed here. Near the end, there's the CDCS plan and the participation agreement. So if you're completing the state CDCS plan, you can sign it electronically, or you can sign it with a pen and send it in. There's different ways to do it. If you are using the most current version of the plan, just signing this last page of the document is fine. Sometimes people will use their own version of the plan or an older version, and then we need to ask you please to sign the additional documents, that is the participation agreement. The participation agreement, like the last few pages of the plan, spells out all the rules, all the things that you are agreeing to abide by as you work with your person using CDCS. And so your understanding of those things is important, and your signature about those is also important. The section under that is where we as the lead agency will review the plan and document in the boxes and sign as appropriate. So again, signatures may be electronic or hand signed, and in individual situations, say there's a virus and people can't get to work and we're doing things in new and innovative ways, we can temporarily verify your acknowledgement by phone and seek a real signature at a later date. We'll work together to get through this. Please return the following documents. We need a signed community support plan. We need a signed participation agreement if you are using an older version of the plan. We need a signed and completed health and safety plan. And we need alternative treatment forms that are completed and signed by a state plan physician if they're needed. Your case manager will also collect from you the signed Tennyson notice, signed notice of privacy practices form, completed and signed 3543 form, and a signed release of information. We will be going through those forms, what they mean, where you sign, kind of all the details that you need to know in the third module of this training. When you return the documents, please refer to your individualized CDCS Next Steps checklist to find out where you need to send your plan to. Check to be sure that you've signed and dated each form before sending them in for review and approval. And please be sure that you send in all your documents at the same time, not just a couple here and there, because they will probably never get all together again and we'll have to ask you for more. So sometimes there's things that can hold your plan up. If the medical assistance is closed, waivers can't go through and things are held up. If the assessment is more than 60 days old, you're going to need another assessment and that'll take some time. If not all the documents are submitted, that can hold things up. If the plan is written in a way that doesn't include the details that we've just talked about, that's not approvable and we'll have to send it back and that'll delay things. If there's a lack of coordination between services or if your plan is submitted beyond the deadlines, it can mess things up and hold up the plan. So please try to complete things in a timely manner and get them in as soon as possible so that we can get things approved and going for the person who wants to use the waiver. Come to the end of section 2. The next module is entitled Completing the CDCS Plan Worksheets, and you will get to hear Mr. Jerry Mellum, who has taken the lion's share of developing this module series, and we thank him from the bottom of our hearts.